All right. Greetings, everybody. I'm Larry Williams, the director of CARMA, the Consortium for the Advancement of Research Methods and Analysis. It is January 17th, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to CARMA Quick Chat with Stine Grodal. And we're talking with Stine in my role as CARMA director. If you don't know about CARMA, we are in our 29th year. We are an academic research center now at Texas Tech University in the Rawls College of Business. And our mission is continuing education events related to research methods for management and organization studies, faculty, and doctoral students. And the reason we're having this quick chat today is because our guest is going to be giving a webcast lecture next Friday. And that webcast lecture, you can have access in a couple different ways. We have a couple different memberships models. Institutions join, and if institutions join, all the faculty and students get access. We now have about 150 universities worldwide that join. And then also we have partnerships with different academic organizations that allow access. So we're very happy we're having this conversation on a Saturday, and we're very happy that you could fit us into your busy schedule. And so let's get started. So as I was telling you earlier, a real favorite part of my job is the opportunity to get to meet a new distinguished methodologist. You're a distinguished professor there at your appointment in Northeastern. And I'm always interested in the various ways that they ended up landing into the gigs and the positions and the disciplines that they study. So, how did that happen to you? What led to your transition from psychology, your undergraduate and master's, into a PhD in management science and engineering?
Yeah, so for myself, I was always interested in innovation. And so the reason was studying psychology was because I was interested in how do people become more innovative and how do they become creative. And so when I started my studies, and I had thought that I was going to pursue that through a cognitive neuro perspective. And so initially doing psychology was mostly focused on cognitive neuroscience classes. However, at some point in time, I began to work in a cognitive neuro lab and was doing a lot of experiments. And after having done that for a long time, I realized that I was more interested in understanding how people were creative and innovative, kind of in the real world, and that I didn't enjoy the lab work that much. And so then I began to ask around about, well, did anybody study how people were innovative kind of in their day-to-day practices?
Yeah.
And somebody told me, hey, you should go over and talk to the people in organizational psychology because they study how people are innovative at work. And so then I had some conversations with some of the professors in organizational psychology, and they said, yeah, they were interested in some of these topics and that they would be happy for me to switch over to become more interested in organizational psychology. And
Yeah.
so I really found my calling there. And so when I was looking at PhD programs, it was a very easy transition to think about, oh, what I'm really interested in is in organizational theory and management. And so all of the PhD programs I looked at were in management.
Yeah. And was that the time that your interest in qualitative methods emerged? Or if it wasn't, when was it? And kind of how did you make that transition from the experimental lab work into your interest in qualitative methods?
Yeah, it was at that time. I've always been interested in methods at the time. I was also I was a TA in statistics and kind of loved working with numbers. But when I began to do some of the readings about organizational psychology and how people are innovative at work, I became exposed to some of the work by some of our great ethnographer, John McMahon, Steve Barley in particular, and I was fascinated by these studies about how people were innovative at work. And so I developed this interest in qualitative work at that time.
Yeah. Well, I'm the director of our coordinator of our doctoral program at in Rawls, and we had a kind of a welcome back to the New Year session, and we've got three students that are have finished their comps and they're in the process of trying to pick a dissertation topic, and it's kind of hard to know how to guide them because in some ways it's sort of magical circumstance and in some ways. So how did it work with you? How did you end up with choosing your particular dissertation topic?
Yeah, well, so I came to Stanford in 2001, which was right after the dot-com crash. And as you can imagine, it had a big role on the kind of the feeling in the Silicon Valley about um, technology and what just happened, that we had this enormous hyped up industry that just crashed in front of our eyes. So I was kind of that I was fascinated by that and thinking, it'd be interesting to study something like that. And so then a friend of mine one day, who was a member of the MIT Alumni Club, said, "Hey, there's this event going on in the MIT Alumni Club about nanotechnology. Do you want to come? Maybe you're interested in technology, maybe you're interested." And I went to that, and it was fascinating because when people were talking about nanotechnology at the time, this was around 2003, it sounded to me just like the dot com. And so it's like,
Uh-huh.
wow, this is fascinating. And so that led me to study nanotechnology.
Okay. So, also, one of the things that I enjoy about getting to meet so many fantastic scholars is I look at people's vidas and kind of see the interesting things that have happened throughout their career. And one of the things that I noticed with you from your Vita, if I followed it correctly, is about 8 to 10 years into your training you ended up teaching a seminar on philosophy of science and research methods. And I had a similar kind of experience of after having been in my position for a while teaching a new course, it impacted me. And so I just was wondering if what that experience was like and if it had a similar impact on you.
Yeah, it was a very, very interesting class to teach. I'd always been interested in research methods in kind of both on the quant and the qual side of things, because although I've done a lot of qualitative work, I've also done a lot of quantitative work. So I've also kept kind of an interest in statistics and in a more quantitative approach to management. And so for me, it was also a lot of kind of my worlds coming together and thinking about both the differences and also the similarities between different kind of methods and different kind of approaches to developing knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so then subsequently, or maybe this is just me selectively seeing things, it really seemed as it may be an accurate description to think of you as a mixed methods researcher, particularly now that I know more about your background. And as I've gotten to talk to various people, it seems like in the past, maybe 10 years, we've really seen a growth in interest in mixed methods and a lot of changes in the way that people think about and conduct mixed methods research. And so I thought you might have an interesting perspective on changes that you've seen during that period in terms of the mixed methods research that occurs in our discipline.
Yeah, I think that mixed methods is great. I mean, of course, I do that. That the kind of person in the middle of things. But I still think that it's very difficult to publish mixed methods papers, at least in the truest form, in a sense, in a form where you're actually saying this is a mixed methods paper, and I'm going to conduct both a qualitative and quantitative element of it. I think that we see more mixed methods papers, but they tend to be papers that lean one way or the other.
Yeah.
It can be a quant paper that then also does some interviews. Or it's a qual paper that maybe has a graph displaying some data that evolves over time. But a
Yeah.
true mixed methods paper, I still think is hard to publish because, first of all, it's difficult to publish because of the page constraints. We need to
Yep.
fit two studies into the space of one study, meaning that it's often it ends up feeling like each is done poorly, right? This is one
Yeah.
problem. The second problem is a reviewer's problem, that if you have three reviewers, you will end up with, two of one kind of reviewer and one of another kind, and they will want different things. And so if you have two quantitative reviewers, they will want more of the quant stuff, and the one qualitative reviewer will want the qualitative one. And then you are torn between satisfying your reviewers who wants different things from you. So I think to me, the way I've been most successful at publishing mixed methods papers, which I actually think a lot of my papers are mixed methods, is by publishing what I call closeted mixed methods papers. So these are mixed methods papers that pretend to be either a qualitative or a quantitative
Hmm.
paper,
Hmm.
so that they lean one way or another, so that you present it primarily as a qualitative paper that then maybe includes some quantitative data, or is presented primarily as a quantitative paper, but then that also draws on qualitative data in order to develop the hypotheses that you have. Yeah.
Well, yep, and it seems to me like that one of the changes that's occurred is that it used to be the case that people would end up including papers of both that with both types of methods when each side had weaknesses, and the thought was that if we put them together, we can solve the weaknesses of either side. And oftentimes that was done sort of after the fact. Whereas I think now I have the sense that that successful mixed methods research is more planned from the beginning. Right. And there's more thought given to exactly whichever the one is the primary one, how it's going to inform decisions that are made about the other one. Is that you see that kind of trend as well?
Yeah, I think that people, in a sense, I think people are thinking also more and more about methods, right? And I think the also because it is increasingly hard to publish in the top journals in our field. There's more and more competition to publish in the top journals of our field. And so it's very difficult to get a paper published where you haven't just even at the onset given a lot of thought to what are you really doing here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and one of the other changes that I'm interested in getting your view on is this whole notion of rigor in qualitative research, because it just seems like in recent years there's been increased discussion. And so, do you think that management qualitative studies have become more rigorous? And if so, how did that happen? Are the authors just better prepared, or the editors and reviewers doing a better job? That what's the sense of what's driving this?
Yeah, I think that at least if you go back, to the 60s, 70s and track qualitative research in its kind of very long historical arc, you will find that it has become more rigorous, at least in the sense that it's become more explicit inside of the paper what was actually done, right? And
Hmm.
so we have developed more norms around how do we present and talk about qualitative research. However, I also think that that tendency has nearly become overdone to the extent that lately too many papers have become too templated. And I actually think that when you have a qualitative paper that is too templated, it actually decreases the rigor of the paper. So
Uh-huh.
why is that? It's because it actually reduces the transparency of what was done because the no qualitative research can follow a template because qualitative research is very messy and it's very individual for each of the studies what should actually be done in order to really nail down the theoretical contribution. And so I find that many people are afraid to actually describe the method exactly as it was done because it doesn't follow into a specific template that they believe is what the reviewers and the editors want to see, right? So this
Yeah.
kind of notion and idea that a qualitative paper has to look in a very specific way means that everybody's presenting the methods in the same way, even if that was not what they actually did. And so I think we need to step back from that. And there's also a movement kind of, I'm not the only one stating this, right? There's also a movement saying, no, we need to get a little bit further back to the roots and say, in your method section, what you really need to do is display transparency. What did you actually do? And have the reader follow those exact steps so that they can make judgments around how did you actually come from your data gathering, your analysis into the theory that you're building.
Yeah. Well, we'll close as I mentioned earlier. We're having this chat in preparation of your Karma webcast lecture next Friday, the 23rd. That's at noon Eastern time. You can find more information about all of our programs and the webcasts at our website, karma.ttu.com. So, can you give us a preview of what you're going to be talking about?
Yeah, so what I'll be talking about very much continues from we were just talking about how do we actually do qualitative research and also report on qualitative research. And in particular, I'm going to talk about how to use abduction in qualitative research.
Mhm.
So, first of all, I think that most of the work we currently do is abductive, even though we often use the inductive label to describe what we are doing. So, I'm going to mention that, but then I'm also going to explicate what does abduction mean in qualitative research. In particular, saying, well, there are two main components of that, which is that it really starts with identifying a puzzle or an anomaly in your data that cannot be explained by existing theory. And once you've done that, subsequently, you want to find an explanation for that anomaly. Why did it occur? And that is actually the building block of theory. And then I'll go into more details about that. But those are the main thrust of what I'm going to be talking about.
Yeah. Well, we are a very strong supporter of all types of methods, including qualitative methods. I'm very happy to have you contributing to our program. You know, we've got good contributors to Karma in the Boston area at BC, BU, and Northeastern, and I hope we have a good turnout. And we really appreciate you taking the time on a Saturday to chat with us, and we will see you next Friday. Thank you very much. Safe travels.
I look forward to it.